It's episode 547 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. On today's episode, I'm ranking where the Rangers offense ranks among AL West teams versus the infield, breaking it down with the outfield, all that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On to the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Brice Paterik, here, host of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast, where it's your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. And if you're not already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Brice Paterik. Follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's episode, I am ranking where the Rangers offense ranks among AL West teams. I'm also ranking where the other teams rank as well. So we're just going to do a whole bunch of rankings thing. Yeah, we're getting back into it. It's Friday. There's not a whole lot more lockout news. The MLB, PA, and MLB met to talk about their proposals and how far apart they are. And, you know, it's looking like BetOnline has some odds on when the first day of the Major League Baseball season is going to start. And it's looking like the odds for it starting in April are worse than it starting, I believe, in August. But you need to go check out those odds on BetOnline. It's a great place for all your sports betting needs. And I'm hoping that they're wrong. I'm hoping that they're wrong, but I don't think they are. It's looking like the lockout is going to last a while. I'll get into it a little bit more next week. We did a lot of lockout heavy talk this week, so I'll save a little bit of it for next week. And on Monday's episode, I'm going to be doing some extra fun stuff and previewing what to expect from the middle infield and projecting what that's going to look like for the Rangers. So some fun stuff coming up. But let's go ahead and get into these rankings. I'm going to start with the infield, then later on I'm going to talk about the outfield / DH, then overall where those two parts put together put these offenses in the American League West, because there's going to be some pretty good offenses this year in the American League West at this point, assuming the A's don't fire sale everybody who's good, which they just might. But at this point, where we are right now, it's looking like these offenses are going to be pretty good. Now, let's get into the infield. The Rangers, I'm putting them at number one, the best infield offensively in the American League West. Yeah, that's a big ranking for sure. But I have faith in this middle infield. I also have faith in the guys around them. I know Josh Young is not going to be there. If Josh Young was there, I'd feel more confident in this pick. But I still feel fairly confident. And this means I am giving a big boost of confidence to Nathaniel Lowe, along with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa taking a little bit of a leap offensively. Now, I'm not factoring in defense. Otherwise, I might have to change some things around at this point. But for right now, I think this offensive infield is going to be the best in the American League West. They've got Nathaniel Lowe, Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and then I'm counting the catchers infield as infielders because they are in the infield, even though they're their own kind of thing. They're still on the infield dirt, so they count as infielders. In Jose Trevino and Jonah Heim, I think these two are going to take a little bit of a step up next year. They're fine. They're solid. They're catchers. You're not going to expect a whole lot of offense from them. There's not a whole lot of great offensive catchers in the game in general, and definitely not in the American League West this year. But Nathaniel Lowe, I think he takes a big step. I'm hoping that IKF can take a step, but the middle infield of Seager and Semien, it's by far the best in the American League West. I think the best in the American League, and maybe the best in all of baseball at this point. These guys are incredible. Two of the best free agents the Rangers have ever signed, and they are going to hit bombs and do joyful baseball things whenever the baseball season starts. I am very much looking forward to that, and I'm pissed that we don't have it yet, but we'll get it eventually. Number two, infield-wise, I am ranking the A's right there, because as of right now, they have the two best corner infielders in the entire American League West, and it's not particularly close. As much as I love Nathaniel Lowe, Matt Olson is just so stinking good. Jed Lowry is fine. Elvis is fine. He'll probably still be there starting this year. And Matt Chapman is absolutely incredible. I mean, both of those guys on the corner infield are fantastic. Matt Olson had a phenomenal season, 156 games, had a 911 OPS, 39 home runs, on base of 371, slugged 540. The guy was an absolute monster. Also had 35 doubles as well. Then you throw in Matt Chapman, who didn't have a great season for him. 27 home runs, only 15 doubles, only a 716 OPS, but still, he has that past of being absolutely incredible. Also, I mean, I guess subliminally, I'm counting his defense in here too, maybe a little bit of how good he is. Because Jed Lowry didn't have that great a year. He was 37 years old. He played 139 games, only a 717 OPS, and Elvis had a 614 OPS. But Sean Murphy at catcher did some pretty solid work, and I think he's going to take a step up next year. He's a guy who's still fairly young, hasn't been to the big leagues a whole long time, been a top prospect for a while, catches pretty well, and hits absolute taters, got some really nice raw power. He's 26 years old last year, played in 119 games, hit 17 bombs, a 710 OPS, which I believe is the best among catchers in the American League West. There might have been one more that had a little bit better. Maybe Max Stassi, I think, might have had a little bit higher OPS than him, but still really solid stuff from him, and I am a big believer in him and these corner infielders. Really good stuff from them. The Astros, they've got Yuli Gurriel, who's going to be 38 next year, but still had a really solid season at 37 at first base for them. Jose Altuve continues to age, but continues to be really stinking good. He had an 839 OPS this year as a 31-year-old, which is not as old as I thought he was. I thought he was like 35 at something at this point because it feels like he's been around for forever. But he still had 31 home runs last year. I still don't know how a guy who's like 5'2" at best, probably listed at like 6'1" or something, but he's really, really tiny, but still gets a lot of power. 350 on base last year, still doing solid work. Carlos Correa, I'm factoring him in as gone. He's just going to be gone. But their top prospect is a shortstop, Jeremy Pena, who I believe is going to be ready for opening day. He spent last year in AAA, had 133 plate appearances at AAA and 10 home runs in those 133 appearances. He is going to be 24 this year. Actually, I believe turning 24 maybe at the end of the year. But a third-round pick out of Maine in 2018, which is just insane that they got a guy in the third round out of Maine who turns out to be a top 100 prospect in baseball. Now, he's not going to be Carlos Correa, but I think he's going to be really, really solid. Also, I have to think that Alex Bregman is going to have a bounce-back year. He had an absolutely awful, for him, 2021, and I think he's much better than that, as much as I think he's kind of annoying. He only had 91 games and a 777 OPS, which, better than the Rangers were doing at third base last year offensively. But again, for him, that's really, really bad. So I think they're going to be fine. Martine Maldonado is an absolute just nothing on offense, but he is a fantastic defensive catcher, so I think he's going to stay there and provide basically zero offensive value because they don't need it because they've got a really, really deep lineup. So the Angels have Jared Walsh, David Fletcher at second base, a question mark right now at shortstop. Their shortstop from last year is gone. I think they might be in contention to sign Carlos Correa because their owner is trying to get players food included in the luxury tax, what they spent on luxury tax. One of three, I believe, owners that were reported by The Athletic of people who wanted to include their daily food stipend in the calculation for the luxury tax, which is absolutely just disgusting and stupid and extremely cheap and embarrassing. But they also have Anthony Rendon at third base and Max Stassi at catcher, who did fairly well last year catching. He had a 752 OPS in 87 games. So, yes, that is a little bit higher than I just said. Sean Murphy had 13 home runs in 87 games, 319 plate appearances. Jared Walsh is a really solid offensive first baseman, 29 home runs last year. Then, even though Rendon was hurt last year, and I believe was hurt a little bit the year before, when he's healthy, he is an offensive force. The Mariners, I don't know what they're going to do at third base because they have a question mark there because Kyle Seager just retired. But at first base, they have Ty France. They just brought in Adam Frazier. They have J.P. Crawford at shortstop and Tom Murphy at catcher. So we do have two Murphys catching in the American League West, which I think is very, very fun. Ty France had a really solid year last year. Adam Frazier did make the All-Star team, but kind of fell off a cliff once he got traded to San Diego to a contender, which I don't know that the Mariners will be as big of a contender as the Padres were supposed to be last year, but I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on him to do well as compared to where there was in Pittsburgh, which, again, not really saying a whole lot. J.P. Crawford was solid. Not great offensively. He's about average. Does really well defensively. That's why he earns his keep. At third base, I think they're a real sneaky front runner which, again, you can't really be a sneaky front runner, but I think people aren't thinking about it a whole lot because there's a whole lot more going on. But free agency-wise, I think they could be the favorites to sign Chris Bryant. They need one more big veteran bat in there, I think, with Seager, the elder Seager, retiring, and I think that would be a perfect fit for them. But again, he's not there, so I rank them dead last in the infield in offense. Coming up, we're going to talk about the outfield and why the Rangers might not be nearly as solid as some of the other teams in the American League West. But first, I'm going to talk to you guys about Built Bar. That's right, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar, and this time of year, at the beginning of March, I have completely given up all of my New Year's resolutions except for the ones that are powered by Built Bar, because Built Bar makes it easy to eat healthy. They are absolutely delicious and good for you. It's, if you try the Built Bar Puffs, it's absolutely amazing. If you haven't, you're missing out on one of the best tasting Built Bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they are an absolute treat. And, of course, because they're Built Bars, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high in protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com, scroll down and see the macros. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb, all those good things that you need. Built Bar has you covered. They're all fantastic. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Now, let's look at the outfield. I can guarantee you I'm not ranking the Rangers first like I did on the infield. They are not nearly there, but I'm also including DH in this because I had to put a DH somewhere, and there's 5 infield positions, and so there's only 3 in the outfield. So I'm including DH, plus most of these guys who are playing DH are some sort of I can't quite fit in the outfield type of guys and would play outfield if asked to play in the National League, where there's not an all-time DH at this point until we get the new CBA, in which case there will be an all-time DH everywhere. Anyway, number 1, I think you all know who this is. It's the Angels. It's gotta be. It's just absolutely gotta be. There's Mike Trout and there's Shohei Ohtani. It doesn't matter who else is there. It does not matter. Those are the 2 best players in the entire division, and it's not particularly close. They are both all-time greats. They are all phenomenal, and they are all ridiculous, or both ridiculous. Also, when you look at the corner outfield, you have Justin Upton, who I think still got something left. I mean, he didn't do super great last year in a 89 game season for him, only a 705 OPS, but he did have 17 home runs. But the walk rate has really gone down. The batting average has gone down, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Taylor Ward had an okay season for them last year in right field. They've still got some other options in the outfield. They've got Brandon Marsh, who was okay, pretty solid defensively, but does not hit for a lot of power and does not get on base at a super high clip. So I think he might be relegated to the bench. As great as his flow is, I think that's where his role lies in the future. But Taylor Ward had a solid 65 game season, a 769 OPS, 8 home runs in that span, on base of 332, slugged 438. Solid, fine, third outfield type of guy with the other guys in waiting. You also have Joe Adele waiting in the wings. Had an okay 703 OPS in 35 games this year. Couldn't quite get into the full swing of things. But again, when you have Shohei Ohtani, when you have Mike Trout, it's impossible to rank them anything lower than number 1 because those guys are just so much better than anyone else in the division, or really maybe even Major League Baseball, because they're just outstanding. Number 2, we have the Astros. Don't think it makes me feel good to rank these guys high. I'm just trying to be objective here, and objectively, they're really good. They are losing Michael Brantley, I believe, in free agency. He is a free agent. They might sign him back, but they might not. I don't think they're going to spend a whole lot of money in free agency. And Michael Brantley is kind of on the way down. He is going to be 35 next season. Had an OPS literally 1 point below 800 this year, but was fine. In center field, I think they're going to throw out Miles Straw. Played in 98 games this year as a 26-year-old, an OPS under 700, but they have Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez, both absolute hitting monsters. They also add Jose Siri, who only played in 21 games last year in the regular season, but had a 956 OPS in those 21 games and 4 home runs in that span. I think he's going to play left field for them. Miles Straw is probably going to stick in center field. Kyle Tucker in right field, who had a 917 OPS last year, 30 home runs in 140 games. Yordan Alvarez had 33 home runs to lead their team as their DH with an 877 OPS. I'd like to see his on base be a little bit higher. He's at 346 last season, but again, when you're mashing and have a 531 slugging percentage, you can be a little picky. And he's also an offensive monster. He's just an absolute offensive monster. So they rank number 2. Number 3, this is more of a projection pick than anything else, which I guess everything with the Mariners at this point is. They have Jared Kelenic in left field. I think Kyle Lewis in center field. Julio Rodriguez, who is their top prospect, one of the top prospects in all of baseball, in right field. And Mitch Haniger coming up, and I think he will be relegated to the DH role because he is not that great defensively. Haniger had a great season last year at the age of 30, 157 games, 39 home runs, which led the team, an 804 OPS. Again, he doesn't walk a whole lot, a 318 on base percentage, and slugged 485, but had 39 home runs and was absolutely hitting tanks, which is what he did very, very well last year. Jared Kelenic didn't do as great as expected, a 615 OPS in a few plate appearances, but he is absolutely mashed everywhere he's been. He had a really, really rough start and really came on in the back half of his season, his big league season, I should say, which is basically the final 2 months, which is when the Mariners were making their push and almost made the playoffs on the last day of the season. But they have a few guys on the bench: Taylor Trammell, Kyle Lewis, again, who's probably going to play quite a bit. Jake Fraley had a pretty okay season as a 26-year-old. Luis Torrens, I'm not sure if he plays the outfield, but he was their DH, so he can kind of count. 108 games last year, 730 OPS, still has some promise, but again, I think this all centers around Julio Rodriguez coming up and being amazing, Jared Kelenic figuring it out, and Kyle Lewis getting back to his Rookie of the Year self. So I think they are going to be the number 3 offensive outfield in the American League West at this point. Now, number 4, we have the A's. Tony Kemp had a really, really solid season as a kind of utility guy, had a 3.3 WAR season, and played in 131 games with an 800 OPS, 8 home runs, 16 doubles, an on-base of 382, and slugged 418. An absolute on-base machine. I think he's probably going to start in left field for them. He also might start in second base over Jed Lowry. Not sure at this point, but I don't know. He could start quite a few places, but they just lost Mark Canha, who was a big part of their offense, absolute on-base machine, a 358 on-base last year. In center, they have Ramon Laureano, who is real hit or miss, literally hit or miss, a 246 average, a 760 OPS, with an absolute cannon for an arm, 14 home runs last year. Seth Brown, who was their rookie at age 28, I think he is still going to stay in right field, had a 20 home run rookie season, but an on-base of 274 and slugged 480, so real, again, hit or miss kind of guy. They had Mitch Moreland as their DH, which he's not going to DH a lot of places because he's so good defensively at first base, but when you have Matt Olson, you really don't need anybody to back him up and make up for his defense. So if they had Mitch Moreland there at DH, I have literally no idea what they're going to do. Maybe they'll have some Sky Bolt. They're probably not going to have K. Chris Davis, who is back to being called K. Chris Davis because of what he did on the Rangers. But again, I don't think it really matters because I don't think their offense is going to be super great in the outfield. But the Rangers right now are a big old question mark. They don't exactly know what to project for their outfield because they're probably going to sign at least one starting outfielder. But right now, I'm projecting it as Cole Calhoun in left field, Lily Taveras in center field, Adolis Garcia in right field, and DH of Willie Calhoun. I think right now, Tony Kemp and Ramon Laureano and Seth Brown and question mark DH are a little bit better than them. It's kind of close, but I don't know. I really wrestled going back and forth with the Rangers and A's, but I think it's kind of fitting for the Rangers to be number 1 in infield offense and number 5 in infield defense. So that's where I think the Rangers rank in all this. Coming up, I'm going to rank where all these teams stack up when you look at the entire offense, both of these parts put together, plus maybe a little bit look at the bench. But first, I want to tell you guys about Bet Online. That's right, this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Football season might be over, but basketball is in full steam with pro and college hoops. For the latest odds, totals, player performances, and props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number 1 spot for all your sports betting needs. And like I said earlier, you can go place your bets on when the Major League Baseball season is going to start. Hopefully, it will start sooner rather than later, but you can see the odds and the things they are projecting. I'm thinking it's probably going to start in July, but I'm not sure what the odds are on that, so maybe if you want to go later, that's your prerogative. I'm hoping it starts in June. I'm hoping it starts like tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. But I don't know. You can go place your bets on that. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Now, you stack up these offenses, two pieces parts, and what do you get? Well, you have the Rangers, who are absolutely splitting everything up in the middle. Number 1 in infield, number 5 in outfield. The Astros are consistently up near the top. I rank them as the number 3 infield and the number 2 outfield. So I am putting the Astros at number 1 in total offense this year in the American League West. I think it's just such a deep lineup, and it's so talented, and they really, if you really wanted to, squint your eyes and look at it, you could have put them, well, you couldn't have put them number 1 in outfield because nobody is topping Trout and Ohtani unless Trout is hurt. That's it. That's the only way that any of these outfield offenses top either of these guys. But I think the Astros, if you squint at it, if you wanted to argue fervently in their favor for number 1 in the infield, I could definitely hear those arguments because they are a very, very deep lineup, and so I think they have the best offense in the American League West. Number 2, I'm putting the Angels. I think they have a lot, like all of these offenses outside of, the Astros, I think there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of, by flexibility, I mean there's a lot of variability of options, of outcomes. I mean, a lot of their offense and how good it's going to be depends on how healthy Anthony Rendon is going to be and what the heck they're going to do at shortstop. But again, outside of that, they got, if Rendon is healthy, they've got 4 really, really good quality offensive players in Jared Walsh, Rendon, Trout, and Ohtani. I think that's enough to be one of the better offenses, if not the best offense in this American League West. So I'm putting the Angels at number 2. Number 3, I got the Rangers. There's a lot of question marks here. I really, really think that they're going to have to be carried by their infield, which, surprise, the 2 guys who they spent $500 million on are going to have to do a lot of work. Yeah, shocker, especially when they're coming into a team that just lost 100 games for the first time in nearly 50 years. So, again, those guys are going to have to do a lot of work. Lowe is going to have to make a lot of improvements, and the outfielders are going to have to take some huge jumps. They're going to need a really big jump from Louis Taveras. Hopefully, Adolis Garcia can be more like first half Adolis Garcia, less like second half Adolis Garcia. Willie Calhoun, I think, is going to make a big jump, and maybe Cole Calhoun and whoever he's platooning with, or if it's just him, can do some solid work there. Number 3, I have the Mariners. Number 4, I have the A's. At this point, it's going to be very quick that they drop all the way off a cliff. But at this point, their infield is just so good. Matt Olson and Matt Chapman are both so stinking good. Sean Murphy, I think, is going to take another leap this year. They also have a pretty solid outfield. It's a little questionable, but Seth Brown, he was a rookie last year. I think he's going to make some improvements. Tony Kemp was really, really solid in the time that he played, and Ramon Laureano has that offensive upside. It doesn't really matter what they do at DH. They don't have a whole lot of prospects on the way. They didn't make any signings so far. Actually, they might have made one bullpen signing, but they're not going to be very active in the free agent market. So I think that their offense at this point is a little bit better. Then last place, we have the Mariners, which it felt mean after all the nice things that I said about the Mariners. I feel like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to put them in last place. But I think they have, at this point, the worst infield offense, which again has the most positions. So technically it's more important. But they could have the best offense in baseball. That's how variable they are. They have a lot of young players, a lot of young guys who had some down seasons last year, who have a lot of potential, a lot of young guys who are on the way coming up. Julio Rodriguez is going to be a big part of their offense, and seeing how well it does. If Julio Rodriguez comes up and he's amazing, this offense could very quickly catapult into the upper echelon of the American League West and the American League in general. But Kelenic needs to make a big, big jump. I think he can. They also need, hopefully, a comeback from Kyle Lewis, Mitch Haniger to come close to what he's doing, and sign some third baseman who's really good. I think they would like to do that. If they sign Chris Bryant, then they might automatically vault the Rangers into the third spot, or maybe even the Angels as well into the second spot. So there's a lot of variability in these choices. There's a lot of things we still don't know, but I feel like at this point, with where the rosters are and the question marks that are there, this is about where they would rank. So Rangers, middle of the pack offense in the American League West. I would take that because this is going to be a fairly strong offensive division. I don't know if the starting rotations are going to be nearly as strong, but I'm going to be talking about ranking bullpens next week a little bit, and some other different things, defense and manager-wise, coming up next week. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.